Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, I had a voice of radio. So today, we are looking at a new Pyroar card. And Pyroar is a Pokemon that has a little bit of a history of being interesting. We had the Flare Command Pyroar, which came around with that Lysander kind of effect, allowing you to drag a Pokemon from the bench into the active. That was pretty cool. And the one that really saw quite a lot of play was the Pyroar from Flash Fire that basically stopped any attacks being done by basic Pokemon. Of course, at the time, Plasma Pokemon were quite big, which meant that you could basically put a Pyroar in the active, and there were a whole bunch of games where your opponent would just go, oh, now I have nothing, now I lose. We've got a new Pyroar, and it again fits into that same, could be interesting kind of mode. Now, obviously, it's a fire Pokemon, which gives it a few advantages for the time being, at least until the rotation hits. You've got Scorched Earth, which will allow you to draw a few extra cards. You've got the Baby Volcanion, hey Nick, which does allow you to, get a bit more energy out with that Power Heater. So they're a worse Pokemon to have. And of course, it's a fire type, which means you're hitting Golisopod for weakness. And let's face it, we all think that these metal Pokemon like Duskmane Necrozma are going to be getting very, very good in the near future. We're going to need some decent fire types to try and counter them. Maybe Pyroar could be one of those. Of course, it does have a weakness to water. It's not the worst weakness ever. Like we said with Alolan Marowak recently, Greninja's a bit of a problem at the moment. We've got Empoleon, who could be a pain in the near future. And of course, I'm a big fan of Glaceon. It is still undecided whether Glaceon is actually going to be a good card or not, but it is something you need to watch out for. Either way, we are going to need some good fire Pokemon in the future. That is where Pyroar comes in. And of course, note the artwork with Lysander, that's going to become very relevant very quickly. So the ability here says that you ignore any effects of your opponent's items and supporter cards. And if this sounds a little bit familiar, it should. It's incredibly similar to the Omega Barrier ancient trait, which was probably most famous for being seen on Primal Groudon. And there's a lot of things that are very good about this. It means if your opponent plays an Enhanced Hammer, it won't discard that double colorless energy that you're going to want. It means a Team Flare Grunt is not going to be able to discard that energy from you. It means a Guzma will not be able to drag you into the active. Although, just to confirm a ruling on this one, Guzma won't be able to drag you into the active, but it will be able to knock you out of the active if something else is brought. The rule is, the effect must be done directly to you. So if your opponent plays a Guzma to pull one of your bench Pokemon active, and that incidentally knocks your Pyroar to the bench, that's absolutely fine. The effect is on the bench Pokemon. Pyroar just kind of slips in there. This is a good ability which is very, very useful in the current format. We've seen a whole bunch of decks like Hooper from Shining Legends, which comes around as a deck which basically just gets rid of all of your energy and waits for you to deck out and lose. It's a super annoying deck. We've literally seen people playing the Energy Keeper Carbink in fighting decks just to counter things like this Hooper, using stuff like Crushing Hammer. Well, you don't need to play some fancy tech if you're playing this particular Pyroar, because you've got that built-in immunity with this ability. It's a great ability. Like we saw with Primal Groudon, it means you can leave it on the bench until you're ready to bring it active and attack with it. You can afford to leave it on the bench, build up the energy slowly, safe in the knowledge that there is no Guzma coming down to drag it into the active. I say Guzma, anything like Counter Catcher, for instance, as well, also would not be able to drag it into the active. This is absolutely crucial. You can keep it on the bench safe, you can keep the energy on it, and there's plenty of other item cards and supporter cards around which will do fun things against your Pokemon. Well, fun for your opponent, not very fun for you. All of them do nothing against Pyroar. That is great. But the thing is, as we saw with things like Primal Groudon, it's all very well and good having these nice abilities, but you've actually got to have an attack to go with it. That's alright. We've got a decent attack here as well. Now, Autobot Tesla has translated the name as Dominate Fang. I'm a big fan of that attack name. And it does 80 damage for a fire and 2 colourless energy. Straight off the bat, not particularly good. The one saving grace is if you add a choice band with weakness, it will get a one-hit KO against a Golisopod. That's pretty nice. But that's about it for the time being. But of course, there's a secondary effect here. If you've got Lysander's Lab in play, then you actually do 140. 140 is good. That's a good number. Because of course, if you add a choice band on there, then all of a sudden you're doing 170 and oh look, Tapu Lele goes down. Now, it's not enough to KO something like a Buzzwole, unfortunately, unless you want to play something like a Professor Kukui as well, which is something that could be done. You're hitting decent numbers here and you're getting big KOs. But the other thing is, 140 is going to be more than enough to KO something like a Solgaleo GX, for instance, if you're hitting for weakness. Now, there is a big issue with hitting for weakness, of course, because there are two things that metal decks are going to have in the near future to remove weakness. You've got the new Solgaleo GX, whose ability removes weakness from all of your Pokemon, and is going to see play in metal decks. And you've got the item tool card Metal Frying Pan, which when attached to a metal Pokemon, means you take 30 less damage and removes your weakness. Little bit of a pain. At this stage, I should probably tell you what Lysander's Lab does. Now, I'm going to do a proper video on Lysander's Lab tomorrow. It is an interesting stadium card that really does deserve its own discussion, not to just be chucked in as an extra in this video. But for the time being, what you need to know is, it means that all Pokemon tools on the field, yours and your opponent's, have no effect. And this is where we look again at Metal Frying Pan and go, oh, well, if Lysander's Lab is in play, Metal Frying Pan doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't stop the extra damage coming down. It doesn't stop you hitting for weakness. That is absolutely lovely. Now, it does mean that Solgaleo's ability that stops weakness will still stop you getting a one-hit KO. There's not much you can do about that other than playing a Garbodor, but, you know, I think we're going to see, and I did make a video about this, shockingly, I think we are going to see a whole bunch of people playing Garbodor in these fire decks just to try and stop this new Solgaleo if metal decks are as good as they actually appear that they are going to be. Either way, this is a good attack. You're doing enough damage to KO Tapu Lele, that's pretty big. You're running through Pokemon like Golisopod, and if you can stop that new Solgaleo, you're getting a KO on metal Pokemon because you get to just ignore Metal Frying Pan. Quite frankly, it's a pretty good attack. It's not a game-breaking attack, but it's pretty nice. And then you build in the ability. This ability is not something that's going to make you want to play the card. But it is something which is going to make you go, okay, that might tip me over if the attack is good enough. Meaning that you can keep it on the bench until you're ready to use it. Meaning that you've got an option on your field which definitely isn't going to fall prey to these catcher decks. And when you've got stuff like Hooper running around, you do legitimately need an option against these stall decks. This will give fire decks that option. When you combine the fact that you've got an option against these stall decks, and you're hitting decent damage, and you're hitting a good weakness, and you've got this good ability, this is a card that I'm giving between 3 and 4 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies. That would be barbaric. I don't think it's an amazing game-breaking card. I do think it is a great tech to put into fire decks. I think it's got a lot of uses, and I do think it's going to see a bit of play here and there. I don't think it's going to be its own deck, but I do see a lot of reason to get excited about this, and like I've said, Lysander's Lab is not a card we're going to go through in detail today. We've had a quick mention of it in the context of this card, but it is a card we are properly going to get into tomorrow. That to me sounds like fun. For the time being, you might want to argue about what I said about Pyroar. You might think that between 3 and 4 Wassies is too generous. You might think it's not generous enough. Either way, I've got great news for you. There's a comment section. Might I suggest using it? Go nuts! be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and so on, you can do so by going to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, and do check out my video game channel Wassy Plays for some video game related action. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.